Everyone. This is Same Difference Theater with your host, Scary Gary. Yeah, I'm always a day short, a dollar late. It's not that I don't know what I'm talking about, it's that I don't know how to talk about what I know. It reminds me of something I heard Alan Watts when he gave a talk one time. I have some of his talks. Um, and he was talking about offhand now. See, I'm rusty on some of this stuff. I hope to get back into and do better at the whole idea of giving the exact names of things and stuff. I know I stumble on things a little bit here in my videos thus far, the ones I've been doing. But I'm trying to get a little bit of groundwork laid there, a backdrop to establish some things about what my videos are going to be about and so forth, and I'll try to get more specific. So I'll pay a little more attention. But suffice it to say, Alan Watts once said that there was some monk, Zen monk or someone, excuse me, who said, he was once asked, what is time? And of course, we all think we know what time is. I mean, there's different definitions of time from science and so forth, and we think, well, you know, people think they've got it down pat, and that's just a way of defining it that human beings do to something that's really abstract and it's really illusory. It's a made-up concept, largely a mental construct, basically. But it's about things changing state or position, and I think I stated that in my last video. But time is, he was asked, what is time? Well, this man said, particular man, he said, I know what it is, but when you ask me, I don't. Now that may sound corny to some people, and somebody might say, well, that sounds, if somebody said something similar in today's society when asked about something, somebody says, oh, you don't know. Doesn't mean you don't know, but you can know something intuitively, but you just don't know how to put it in words. There's so many things about life that are abstract, and we can have a grasp of it intuitively. But then somebody calls us out and asks us to explain it in words, and explaining things in words is about stringing text of words out, just like in a book or out of our mouths, we string along all these words and trying to explain something that we've already got a picture of and some kind of an idea of in our head. And now we got to string it out into words and hope that we choose the best words that hopefully that person listening to us will be able to understand. It's a hard thing to do. Yes, there's some people out there that are good with words, and they're great, what I'd call wordsmiths, for lack of a better word. Terence McKenna was a great wordsmith. But the thing is, even Terence McKenna realized that words, can be as much of a problem as a help. So it's not always possible to get a point across with words, even if you're a good wordsmith. And so I know a lot of people pride themselves on their vocabulary and so forth. Hell, when I was in school, I used to love vocabulary. I like to learn new words, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to string words together to convey an idea, a concept that you understand, or a skill set, or whatever it is, to someone else and get them to be able to understand. You can try to get the right words, but it just may not. It may not convey the idea to somebody else and get a picture in their mind. So, again, I'm not dissing the idea of trying to get a good vocabulary. Of course, in some situations, people use too much flowery wording, and when they could use much simpler, straightforward language. And some people don't like it when you use big words around them. And words, when you use a larger vocabulary, sometimes the nice thing about that is if you can shorten down what you have to say with just fewer words with a larger vocabulary. A large vocabulary word which conveys an idea that would take maybe 2 or 3 sentences to convey if you didn't use that vocabulary word. But again, which cuts down on the length of time that you keep running on and on and on. But it's not the best, how should I say, it's not always the best thing, though, to use big words. And I heard somebody tell me one time, because I was explaining something to somebody, but I try to cover a lot of area when I'm talking, and I try to integrate other subjects and aspects of life together. So some people think I run on and on and on and on, and they don't like that. One person in particular said, less is more. And I agree. There's a certain sense of, sometimes, if you're talking about a specific subject, that yes, less is more. And then that's where a good vocabulary comes in, because you can use one word or a couple words and cut down on a bunch of sentences that you would have to spew out otherwise if you didn't have that larger vocabulary. Anyway, excuse me. I just wanted to go over um, what this video is about. Is I made a video, my last video, and there were some mistakes I had, some corrections. I was wrong on a few dates about something, and some other stuff I wasn't totally clear on. I won't always do this, but I feel like I should try to correct these mistakes. I know there's other ways to do it. I could probably original video put on the screen. I could put text in a program that I can make say, oh, correction, this is actually this. I could say, oh, I meant to say 1984, not 1986 or whatever. And maybe I'll do that in the future. But like I said, I'm not trying to be a total perfectionist right now, and I'm not a perfectionist at core to begin with. But so just try to bear with me. But this time around, I'm definitely going to try to make some corrections to my last video. It's kind of going by some references I have here, because I've got a lot going on these days. And well, actually, that one was made on Thanksgiving. It had to do a little bit with the holiday thing, and I didn't get it up. Excuse me, I didn't upload it until after Thanksgiving. But I'm going to try to get things up in a quicker speed in time here. Just got a few things on my plate, and I can't get things done as quick as I want to and keep rapid with this. If this was my only thing I was doing, these videos, this YouTube channel, I could do better. That's what I'm hoping to eventually do. But anyway, as it is now, I've got some other mundane things I have to do. I've got a job outside the home. I think I made a mistake in about the astrotheological part that I was talking about, like in the Bible, how first they, like the sign of the bull, and then Taurus the bull, because of the golden calf, that Aaron made for the Israelites. Then I said then comes along the ram, which would be Aries. Excuse me. Anyway, it's the other way around. Aries is first, and then because in even in the Bible you see, because in those cultures a lot of times what they did, well, they were shepherds, and they were pastoral. They led a pastoral nomadic life more, okay, which opens. That's another subject I want to get into, and what Terence McKenna has to say with history. Very interesting. But anyway, a pastoral lifestyle, a nomadic lifestyle until they settled into places, okay? So it was more about, shepherding goats, sheep, whatever. So having a ram's horn or some, even to blow into, a lot of times certain tribal people did that, maybe still do to this day in this world in certain places. As an alert signal, whatever, that will blow into the ram's horn. So again, this though is astrotheological, because it fits with Aries the ram. And then when you get to the part of the Bible where they're into and then even here a lot of references to worshiping bulls and so forth, and then there's a golden calf, which is more or less like a bull. It's the same kind of animal in a certain species category. Anybody out there that wants to get picky about things, be my guest. But anyway, the bull, the golden calf, it basically then is the sign of Taurus. And that's another interesting word, Taurus. I can get into that in the future. It correlates with the word Taurus, but I won't get into that right now. But anyway, that's all I want to say, and correct that too. What else did I want to correct here? Okay, yeah. When Jesus, I said about how the sign of Aquarius is kind of referred to when Jesus tells his follower, or tells one of his followers, when they're asking him where are we going to have, what they're going to do is celebrate the Passover. I couldn't think of the damn Judaic holy day. It was the Passover, but which we now we look at it in hindsight. Christians look at, in the Bible, and refer to that whole thing where they're gathering. They don't even necessarily mention it as the Passover. Well, they do, but it's more or less in culture pictured as the Last Supper. And you got that, what is it, Michelangelo's painting, whatever the Last Supper with all the disciples on either side of Jesus and so forth. But that was the Passover. I'm sorry for not getting that correct and not knowing that. I should have known it. I just, got to bear with me here. Uh, Another thing I wanted to say about that water carrier, somebody carrying water. So you find a man carrying water. Well, in that reference, you have to understand back in that culture, and I'm not the first person to say this. I heard somebody else talk about this, and it makes sense. Back then, women were always at the well because there was another instance where Jesus was sitting at a well and a woman was going there to get water. So that was like a womanly duty. Again, I'm not cutting down women. I'm not saying we should relegate women to things like that or something, or that's beneath a man to do that or whatever, like because it's a household chore or something or domestic chore. No, but I'm just saying that's the way culture was back then, most likely. If you look at other references, it pretty much was that way. And so he couldn't have been referring, Jesus could not have been referring to a literal man when he was saying that, because that wouldn't be something that a man would be doing. I mean, some people say, well, maybe in this case a man was, and Jesus knew that because he was, divine, and you know, in their culture that didn't happen. So that's most likely a good indicator that he wasn't referring to a literal man. It had to do with astrotheological conceptualization of the sign of Aquarius. Um, what else did I want to say? Bear with me with the way I'm doing this because I'm kind of I have to get in the right mood for things sometimes, and when I'm not, I got to kind of follow a little bit of reference notes that I have. Um, oh, and what I wanted to mention was that, and I think I mentioned his name before, Santos Bonacci. Also, there's another man named Jordan Maxwell. You can look up on the internet. Jordan Maxwell, JordanMaxwell. Look up stuff on him on YouTube and so forth. He did have his own website. I think he does. There were some disputes he had with somebody who basically stole some of his material or something, and so he had to create a new website. But I don't remember all the exacts of that. But anyway, these are two gentlemen that know quite a bit about astrotheology. In fact, I've listened to an audio where both on some radio show or some kind of internet podcast or something, where Jordan Maxwell and Santos Bonacci were both discussing astrotheological stuff back and forth. So I mean, this is something you can get into if you so desire. I think it would open people's mind if they did to see what's really the backdrop of what we consider to be religion and a lot of other things in our world, the perennial wisdom. And then this stuff ties in with esoteric philosophy and even with the ideas in many ways of antitheticals and alchemy, where you bring the antithetical stuff together to create a synthesis, where, you've got the thesis, they call it, I think it's pronounced that way, and then you got the antithesis of something. That's the opposite. And the goal in life for a true alchemist, and this hasn't, we were taught in school, it had to do with these guys who were trying to make, what was it? Gold? Was it gold? Out of other baser metals or something, which there may be some way to do that, even though chemistry has kind of compartmentalized things and makes that seem like an impossible magical thing, and these guys were just crazy. But they don't also realize, and they don't tell people, is that these men that were alchemists, it wasn't just about creating some kind of physical changes in chemical elements. It had to do with psychological, philosophical concepts about marrying, so to speak, opposites, because the idea of opposites, polar opposites, is illusory. And this is what causes a lot of friction in society, because one side says they're right, the other side says they're wrong, whether it's the Republican right, conservative right, or the liberal democratic left. And I don't want to get into the politics right now. I am not a partisan politic kind of person, but politics is a part of our world. I take my understanding of politics and my discussions from a more philosophical standpoint. Well, anyway, the next thing I wanted to cover was I wanted to get Ken Wheeler. I mentioned Ken Wheeler's videos for people to watch. and I'm trying to remember what his YouTube channel name is. I don't even know how to pronounce it. That's terrible. It's spelled something like Theoriaapop. I want to say HASIS. Um, that helps anybody. But anyway, I'll get that information later. Um, it's just so hard for me to get everything together when I've just got so much on my mind, and I'm under some stresses lately, and I'm not kicking my high chair here, and I'm not making this video for somebody to feel sorry for me. I'm not trying to get sympathy. I'm just at a point in my life where there's some things that I don't like the way they are, and that's why I'm doing this, because this is kind of a release for me. You know, I wish I could just do this all the time, and certain other aspects of my life, a couple things that are bothering me could hopefully get straightened around here, um, because it helps. It creates mental blocks in me, and when that happens, of course, it's hard to focus on such a project as this, and to be able to come across without sounding confused and scatterbrained. Um, yeah. Also, I talked about the idea of force, a little bit of physics there. You know, I had physics in high school, and I read physics books after high school. I didn't go to college for it, but I did remember about force and is equal to mass and acceleration according to Newtonian physics, Newton's laws of motion. I had that screwed up with the units. Please forgive me. It was mass times acceleration, you know. And so the newtons are in units of kilogram meters per second squared. I was getting force and energy mixed up the units and stuff, and it's like the stuff's all up here, but it's kind of like jumbled up because I've been under some stress. Um, Let me see now. Yeah, I wanted to say. Oh, I didn't get to find out again yet what Rene Descartes, what his book was that he wrote, but he was kind of I think he wrote a few books, but one of his writings had to do with the idea of trying to separate spiritual and secular physical ideas. And said, okay, let the religions more or less handle this spiritual stuff. This is the goal of science, to take care of the physical world and stuff. Kind of divorced, did the opposite of alchemical marrying of concepts, divorced them from one another, and of course scientists after him continue to do the same. Probably a few people before him too, but he's just like the most noted for standing out in his book and pretty much spearheading that in the public eye the most, you know, to try to separate those things. Um, what else did I want to say? Oh, and I got a clip of Terence McKenna, and I hope to put it on the end of this video, where Terence McKenna is talking about Rene Descartes and some interesting things about Rene Descartes. But anyway, in in Avengers Infinity War, Thor went to Nidavellir, or whatever how it's pronounced. It was Eitri. They were dwarfs. I got them mixed up as elves. There's another group of beings that were called the Dark Elves. I get that stuff mixed up sometimes, you know. Like I said, I'm not a total geek, so a lot of Marvel geeky comic fans out there would be getting all over me, maybe, or whatever, you know. Uh, I read comics to a certain extent when I was younger. I liked them. I read The Incredible Hulk, but I came along after. Well, I started only reading in the late '70s and the early '80s, so you know, there's a lot of comics that were written before that, storylines in the '60s and in the '60s and the early '70s that I didn't totally get a chance to read, except sometimes in some reprint books. Like there was a reprint book called Marvel Superheroes, and they were doing reprints of excuse me, earlier Hulk storylines and stuff. But for the most part, I just kind of came in late on it. Uh, I've since then, later in life, I got to read some of those older comic lines and stuff, and I got to be exposed to it a little bit more. And I have to say, I got a little obsessed with them a little bit. But excuse me. But yes, I did read comics to a certain extent when I was, you know, in the '70s and early '80s. And Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, uh, hmm, Fantastic Four, the Avengers. Yeah, those were my favorites. Um, you know, I never got into DC comics. I never really cared for that. I'm not dissing DC. I'm just saying that's just something I didn't get into. person only has so much time in life. I can't get into every darn thing, you know. So the thing is, um, yeah, I'll talk about that in some other videos because I said I'll cover stuff about comics sometimes too. Perhaps, you know, I'll try that. You know, whether it's the comics, the old comic storylines, or whether it's a video about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the movies. That excuse me. Then, yeah, let me see now. What else did I want to cover? Well, I think I must have discussed something about classifications. Now, see, we compartmentalize things in this world. We live in a world of compartmentalization, classifications, and that's where the words come in. You know, words are just classes on, you know, words are like, well, we got verbs and nouns in our English language, which is the way we structure our sentences, subject and predicate. You know, there's nouns and there's verbs. It's interesting if you listen to Alan Watts, he talks about that in one of his talks. A really interesting discussion he gives about that. And anyway, the nouns are just the classes on things. Okay, so we can differentiate this from this other thing, and that's what it's all about. Compartmentalization. It's supposed to be the rational side of the brain classifying these things in some logic. Well, what's logic and mean to begin with? Well, it comes from the word logos, which means word. So when we're logisticizing things, when we're rationalizing things, it means we're just putting word labels on things. This is not really rocket science. Anyway, it's about the differentiating and separating of things. But see, if you study esoteric philosophy, like the the Hindu, like Vedic texts, Buddhism, stuff of the Far East, whatever, as opposed to the Near East, because Near East is more like monotheism and stuff. You take the Far East understanding of things, and there's some theories that say that Jesus was really a real person, that he may have been in Tibet or places like that, and he was studying some of that literature. Because if you listen to some of the words of Jesus, he is actually seems like he's resounding some things that are about Eastern metaphysical ideas. I don't like to call the Eastern ideas religion. And I distinguish those words. And again, they're just word labels. I know. I don't want to contradict myself. These are just word labels. But I do make a distinction because I think there's metaphysics and then there's religion, which is secularized metaphysics. You know, there's the esoteric understanding and then there's the exoteric, which is watered down truth, which is in the outer circle of society amongst various people that don't know the full truth, and that translates into a bunch of religions, most of which are your most prominent being your Islam, Christianity, Judaism, like your three major ones, and then of course you got some other offshoots. You got cults, you got different things, and a lot of them though are just branched off from those. Of course, you got what some would consider pagan or heathen. You know, you got your witchcraft and stuff like that, and I have no problem with a lot of that. Sometimes that stuff is given a bad label. I mean, people can understand certain things and have certain knowledge. Whether they use it for good or bad remains to be seen. But the knowledge in and of itself is not bad. That's why people hear the word occult and they think, oh my, that's evil. It just means hidden. Now, whether some people withhold that information from people, which is an evil thing to do, you know, to withhold it and use it against people, the knowledge that you have and use it against people, that's not necessarily a good thing. But the knowledge in and of it, or using it for bad, real devious purposes, that's bad. But to keep it, but the knowledge of it's in and of itself that's kept hidden, the knowledge itself is not bad. It's kind of like a tool. Think of it as a tool. It'd be like if somebody was trying to put two pieces of wood together and use a stone to pound a nail into a piece of wood, and somebody else is withholding the hammer from them. Well, would you say the hammer is a terrible thing? No, because if you had the hammer, the person using the rock had the hammer, they could pound that nail in better. But somebody's keeping it from them. So the tool's not the problem. It's the problem with the person keeping that tool from somebody. Or maybe even using that tool in a bad way, say, in order to conk that guy in the head with it. You know, so the tool itself is not to blame. Anyway, on that, we could get into that with the whole thing with guns and stuff, because everybody thinks taking guns off of people more I realize maybe some people shouldn't. Maybe there's this ridiculousness of people having semi-automatic weapons or something. But and some people say, well, that's all they want to do is get rid of that. They don't want to get rid of all guns. Well, that's how it starts. They start with taking certain things away, and it ends up being more and more. I mean, I've seen this throughout history. How a little bit of some law gets passed, and then pretty soon it turns into something else and something else, and before you know it, you've got a lot of freedom taken away. My point, though, is okay, take the guns away, and is that going to stop people from hurting people? People were killed from things way before guns came along. I could go out, if I wanted to do something to somebody, I could easily go outside, pick up a rock, hit him in the head, whatever. Now, sure, it might be easier with a gun, so somebody's saying, well, this makes it easier, but there's still ways you could do something if you really want to do it. It's kind of like that old saying, too, somebody says they want to be safe and secure, lock my door, and it's like, well, a lock only keeps out an honest person. It can keep out some people because they have already got honesty within themselves and they wouldn't want to break in. Somebody that wants in bad enough, they're going to find a way to bypass that lock or break the lock or whatever. Smash a window, whatever. No amount of legislation or trying to control things through and legislate morality will ever work. It never has. Sorry I got off on a tangent there. The problem with people that do anything that's heinous to anybody or terrible, it's a psychological problem. So we have to tackle it psychologically, not with these medications, mind you. There's a better way to do it, but the psychiatric profession, the medical profession is so ready to throw a pill at somebody that is just masking the real underlying cause. It's like putting a penny behind a fuse in a fuse panel, thinking, well, I won't blow any more fuses. Yeah, you know what you're going to do? You're going to burn your damn house down. Makes no sense. Anyway, I wanted to say, what I want to say is that ultimately the esoteric philosophy says that everything is all one. This is why we have the word soul. And I don't know about anybody out there. You look at the word soul, though. We got a couple different references to that word, a couple different words that have that pronunciation. S-O-L-E, as in soul, as in one, like a sole proprietorship, like a business. Soul, as in S-O-U-L, in the religious circles, they use that word. Excuse me. Soul, also S-O-L, which is another name for the sun. Now, we're told these are homonyms because they sound the same, but they mean different things. And that's okay in our classification world because that holds true if we're going to classify things differently. But, as I found out, many of these things have a common origin. The word soul is chosen for a reason for all these things. There's a connection between the sun, the idea of oneness, and the soul of the thing we say is really us, or the soul that dwells within us, or what have you. Of course, if you listen to Alan Watts, he says that the body is in the soul, and not the soul in the body. And I don't want to get into that right now, but what the thing is we try to distinguish things as being either outside of us or inside of us. In the ultimate scheme of things, inside and outside is another duality. That's all an illusion. But again, I don't want to get into that right now. It's just I want to cover some other corrections that I wanted to make on some things. Okay, and they like to say, see these differentiations. If they all come back to something that's the same thing, that's only illusory in look like it's different things, and this has to do with the fact that we live in a holographic matrix of sorts. That's what the world is. It appears to be physical, but it's holographic, topological, manifold. It's a matrix. It is created by a reiteration function. It's fractal, and the nature of fractals is that what the output is that you get from a formula, mathematical formula, goes right back into the formula as the input to get the new output, and it just keeps cycling back in. Reality is like a thing that's operating like a program that certain outputs go back. The output goes back in to bring. So everything is self-similar. There's no real differences ultimately. It's more of a self-similarity, but it's done on different scales, which gives it the appearance that things are different things. That there's these different things, I should say. There are no things to begin with, but the illusion of things gives this idea that there's a differentiation of stuff, when in fact it's all self-similar, running off the same reiteration function and producing holographic fractalized different things on different, seemingly different things on different scales. But again, I don't want to get into that. You can watch some other people on that. I forget the. Now Nassim Haramein gets into some of that a little bit, but he covers more about geometry and stuff. I didn't get into. He doesn't get too much into the fractals. I don't think. I can't remember. But there's some other individuals. I'll try to have more information on that. But it's interesting because you begin to certain things begin to make sense. See, when I went to school and science was there and teaching me physics and then chemistry and then, everything seems so differentiated and disjointed. And I thought, my God, this whole has to fit together somehow. But it's like the world doesn't care to put pieces together. It loves the differentiation. But then they scratch their head and wonder why problems aren't solved. Well, if you continue to differentiate, you're always going to have problems. You will. It takes an integrated approach to solve problems. And anyway, this is why I chose because they say too, there's an old saying, I think it's a French saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Some people will scratch their head on that and say, what? I even used to, but now I understand what that means. And this is why I chose, part of the reason I chose my channel name. Well, also, same difference, because things that seem different are ultimately the same, one and the same. They're one thing. Self-similarities. The differentiation comes from different scales on things that being on different scales, and since there are different scales, they look like there's something different. Excuse me. And so I have a little meme type thing I found, and it kind of ties in with what I was saying about politics earlier, because I'm not a partisan politician kind of guy. I don't get into partisan politics. I'll talk about it, but I'm not like, okay, I choose this side over this side or whatever. A little meme I've got, and it'll be on the. It's going to be on the beginning of this video. It was on the beginning of it. As I'm making this, I haven't put it on yet, but it'll be on. I think I'm going to have it be on all my videos. Just showing that even though it looks like we got two different parties, there's so many things similar, and behind the scenes, a lot of them work together. They only appear to be antagonists. But anyway, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Same difference. What did I want to say? Okay. Oh, I talked about having a Commodore 64 in my last video. Commodore 64 computer. That was a big thing back in the day, I guess, somewhat, but it would be, not such a great thing today by comparison to what we have today. Well, actually, I had it somewhere between 82 and 84. I was in either 9th, 10th grade or something. See, I can't remember that exactly. I remember quite a few things from when I was growing up, but some exacts I don't always remember. But ballpark figure, yeah. It was somewhere 82 to 84, not 86. 1986 is actually when I graduated from school, so I knew it wasn't then because the computer was gone way before I graduated, so I know it couldn't have been 86. I talked about people who drink on the weekend at the bar. Excuse me. I'm hoarse. You have to excuse me. There's other issues. I try to make it like their only problems are their job or whatever, but that's usually a big part of it. Yes, there's marital issues, their compatibility with their arguments they're getting into, in-laws. There's all kinds of things, yes, that can come into it, but I was just saying in a lot of cases, it's a job related thing. But when you look at life, all these things start to come together, and so even if I just mentioned job, uh, if I said, well, it's all about marital problems, well, that's also why usually that stems from jobs. The guy doesn't like his job, and then he goes home and he's miserable with his wife or what have you. So I mean, a lot of stuff does go back to the rat race and the job, even though yes, there's a few other factors here and there. I'm not trying to isolate it into this one thing. It's always a job. It's the problem. No. But anyway, I love how we have this world. And I was talking about drinking, and we've had commercials. This reminds me too of what Bill Hicks was talking about, and I was trying to remember, and I couldn't in my last video. He was talking about how and he talked a lot about psychedelics and marijuana and stuff. How that's getting such a taboo thing. Now that's starting to change in our world. Now I don't know how far that's going to go. I still think somebody's going to flub it up. It's just going to be, you know, we could really make a difference here now to getting some legalization on marijuana. Obviously it's been legalized in a lot of places for medicinal purposes. Even some places I think now for recreational. I have never seen anybody become belligerent or hurt anybody when they were doing marijuana. Now, cocaine, other certain real bad things like cocaine, other addictive drugs. Yes, marijuana is not addictive. Studies have shown that. Psychedelics are addictive. In fact, if you listen to Terence McKenna, he'll help point this out better than I could. They did studies in the 60s, well, at least around the 60s, somewhere in there, give or take. They were doing studies, and they showed that people that were doing psychedelics, I mean, well, they give them some psychedelics. They weren't doing it like all the time, but they actually, after having a psychedelic quote unquote trip, after they had an experience, a psychedelic experience with either LSD or a magic mushroom, something, they actually, in a lot of cases, were able to kick other habits like drinking and so forth. And Terence McKenna explains how that could come about. So, and yet we have commercials. We've always had these commercials about, here, Bud Light, drink a Bud Light. And I'm not saying anything against drinking. And I think if you do it in moderation. The idea, though, people that own bars wouldn't like me because I'd say, don't go to a bar and drink necessarily. I mean, but like I said, it's funny. They'll advocate that. Our society advocates going ahead and buying that Bud beer, Bud Light, whatever. We had cute little commercials all through it. Also, commercials with beautiful women with maybe a bottle of beer in their hand. That's what Bill Hicks was talking about. It's crazy that in our world we say these drugs are bad, okay, and some drugs are, yes, but they shouldn't all be classified together. You gotta define them operationally. And it's funny because we have things that are legal to that you can get prescribed by a doctor, and they call them drugs too. I mean, this nomenclature screwed up. But anyway, and look at the side effects those things cause, and yet they can still get away with it. Now there's lawsuits that come about and stuff, but again, it's like nobody's really looking at this stuff in a more expansive way and looking at it to prevent these things from being able to be put on the market and then having to cause problems, therefore having to have lawsuits, class action lawsuits to begin with. And and another thing about marijuana, anybody that's ever been around anybody that's smoked marijuana, or you yourself have done it, am I wrong? Did anybody ever want to fight, start kicking somebody's behind? No. In fact, they say things like, "I love you, man," or whatever. It's never been about, never caused any belligerence or something. Now, some people talk about, and Bill Hicks talked about this, about a guy that, well, you hear it in the news. There's always stories like this, maybe still to this day, I don't know. Young man on acid. A young man was on acid, walked out his third-story window, or whatever, off his balcony, fell down to the ground, dead. Now, Terence McKenna used that as part of a joke, but he was trying to make a point. Just because he was idiotic about the thing doesn't mean that was what the problem was. You only get out of something what you put into it a lot of times. If you have a useful tool, like I'm saying, a useful tool, like the example I gave with the hammer, It's only as good as the person that's wielding it and their intentions with it. Are you going to say the tool's bad because somebody chooses to be an idiot with it or do something terrible with it? Because the next guy comes along could use it for a good purpose. Do you think it's right to outlaw the tool? Say, oh, let's get rid of hammers, or whatever. See, well, there's a lot of examples I could give. I don't want to get off on a tangent too far. But yeah, but it's okay. I was talking about the arbiters of what's right and on television or whatever, the censoring. This can't be shown or that can't be done. Yet you can show a woman with, breast hanging, halfway hanging out, drinking a beer, getting a beer at the bar or whatever. That's okay. And that's okay for kids to see that and that picture getting painted in their mind as they become adolescents and stuff. And, then what? Then they're going to look at the women as sex objects and drinking beer and going to the bar and picking up a woman, right? And then, meanwhile, then they go down the street and they're drunk and they hit somebody, kill somebody, get a DUI, cops get them, throw them in jail for a while. Oh, yeah, that's great to advertise that beer and get that old sexual sell behind it and everything. Yet, that's not wrong. But by God, if you're, well, just like George Carlin said, too, to say the F word. It's okay to show people engaged in it, in doing the F thing. But if you say that word, oh, boy, you just crossed over a line. Makes no sense. And then, excuse me. But, or, taking a joint, smoking a little bit of pot, feeling good, not hurting anybody, that's bad for you. We better not catch you doing that. Better not catch you in possession of that stuff. Yet we can inculcate drinking into people at a young age and sell it with sex, and then they end up growing up, going to a bar, trying to pick up loose women, going home because maybe a lot of times they can't get the woman picked up because they become too much of a drunken a-hole. Jump in their car, cause an accident, get a DUI, get thrown in jail for a long time, take somebody's life, and that's okay. It makes no sense. I'm sorry, but if you haven't thought about this, then you need to do a lot more thinking, a lot more research. Come on, people. And anyway, I think that's about all I wanted to say on that. I wanted to put on the end too. I got a Jeff Foxworthy thing. I'm going to put the thing with Terrence McKenna talking about Rene Descartes, and I also want to put a clip from Jeff Foxworthy where he talks about drug side effects and so forth. But anyway, yeah. What else did I want to say? Oh, I did cover about the word explain because, see, I was talking about when you put things in words, you're trying to explain something. And the whole denotation of the idea of explaining means, X means out. Plain is like getting something out in an egg. Think of explain as existential plane. An existential plane of a plane of existence to where other people can see what you're saying. In other words, to get that picture in their mind, the picture's worth 1,000 words it might take for you to explain it. One thing can explain 1,000 other things. That one picture, though, that gets formed, hopefully, from the 1,000 words, says it all then. And it's out there as something that's kind of like a mental object that they can picture in reality. Well, the reality of their mind. Oh, well, for that matter, it might involve something that they could build, and then they could actually build it, and there it would be, physically manifested in the plane of existence. So explain is basically another word for a shortened form of existential plane. I know somebody say, but explain is spelled Explain, and plane is Plane. Again, told you about these things with homonyms. and words sounding the same but supposed to be different things. Homonyms are a big bunch of BS that we were taught and inculcated into our thinking when we were kids in kindergarten, grade school, etc. Just to get people to think that there's no connection with things like the word sun, S-O-N, and the word S-U-N for sun, or like the three occurrences of the word soul, the words are pronounced soul, like I said earlier, and to get you off the scent of the idea that there's something more to reality than meets the eye, and that these things that sound the same aren't completely, or maybe even at all, accidental. They're not accidental things that happen to end up sounding the same. From what I've seen anyway. Now, there may be some things that just happen to accidentally sound the same. But again, these are rooted in some kind of etymological common origin. And I don't know if everybody out there knows what I mean by etymological. I mean, etymology is the study of the history of the origin of certain words and certain phrases. Let's see now. I did speak about visually beheld language that Terence McKenna talked about, so that we can get away from words somewhat. In other words, if I could put that picture in your mind, like telepathy, instead of me having to say it in words and it has to get transduced into your ear, turned into electrical signals to go to your brain, and you end up through with your already stored up memory, try to form it into some kind of mental picture. If I could really just give you that mental picture. Well, excuse me. Well, and Christians talk about the Bible, and then there's always that idea in the book of Acts where they're all speaking in tongues. Well, take a closer look and examine that. What they're basically supposedly doing there is they're all seeing the same thing, the same, beatific vision, as it were. And the word vision means to see. People, come on. This isn't hard to understand. Now, they're seeing something. Well, we have modern day people in different remote parts of the world who do ayahuasca brew. They drink it, and as a group, they ingest this ayahuasca brew, and they all see a same vision. And that's why they can talk. One person can start talking about it, and the next person can talk about it, and everybody knows what they're talking about because they're seeing the same thing. And it has to do with colors and stuff like that, but everybody's seeing that. So it's like when you have a group of people seeing the same thing exactly, one person can start the conversation, the next person can pick it up from there, the next person can pick up where they left off, etc., etc. So is that what was happening? Truly, if there's any truth and literal truth to what the Bible's talking about there. Is that or that is just a story, but it's referring to the idea of practice of doing ayahuasca in groups and some sort of psychedelic blend like ayahuasca, and everybody seeing the same thing, and perhaps speaking in their own native tongue or in different tongues, but obviously describing, at least though, the same thing, because they're all seeing the same thing. Same, I'll use some Christian terminology they like to use in Christian circles, a beatific vision. Okay? And I think that's all that's really going on there. And as, let me see. Let's see, here come, well, did I cover all the corrections? By golly, I did. I got through the corrections that I wanted from the last video. Again, maybe most people wouldn't have cared. If you're a decent person out there and you're not going to be a heckler or a troll, you try to get the quality, get the gist and the message out of my video, my style of things. If you want to pick it apart a little bit, fine, but everybody makes mistakes. Another thing I'd like to talk about here while I'm thinking about it, and I've been a YouTube watcher for better than 10 years now, and that's why I originally I wanted to start a YouTube channel, but I wanted to see how everything works in this whole what's the word I want to use, in this whole YouTube format. I wanted to get a layout of the demographics of what people are like, kind of problems other people run into. Uh, I've watched a lot of videos, and sometimes I've gotten just as much or more out of the comment threads than I have out of the videos. Because I can go down through the comment threads and I'll scroll down through it. I'll read almost every comment. It gets daunting after a while, because it's like there's the comment thread just goes on forever and ever and ever and ever, and eventually you got to cut it short. But how people would, from different points of view, will give their opinions, and there's definitely some outright people that just go somewhere to troll, and they'll say about how they hated the video, and it's like they disagree with something in the video, and it's like, but the title pretty much gave away some things about the video, so why were you even at that video unless you're there to just stir up trouble? That makes no sense to me. But I've seen comment threads too, and we have a lot of people, and I make grammatical mistakes, and I think an English teacher would have a heyday with me. But if you know what somebody's saying, even if they make a little bit of mistake, let it go. But I've seen comment sections where people will make grammatical errors, and somebody also pointed out, or I'm trying to think, what was it? Got to draw upon my memory here now. I can't remember if it was a spelling mistake or a grammatical mistake. They cut this person down for it. And I read their comment, and in their comment, they did the exact same thing. So, I mean, I just like, well, I don't believe in karma in the way some people do, but that's kind of like an instant karma. Hey, you did this, you did that. Oh, I guess I just did the same thing. Whoops, But I've seen that in life a lot of times, because people will judge somebody on something they do. And I've been with people that will judge somebody on something. Like, I was riding with somebody one time in their car as a passenger. They were bitching about somebody didn't turn their turn signal on until the last minute or something. And it wasn't probably a week later, I was in their car with them, and they did the same damn thing. So, I mean, be careful, people. I mean, I know we can get upset in the heat of the moment. But try to think, though, in hindsight, and even if you get upset, try to reflect on things and say, you know what? I should understand that person more. And hey, I make mistakes too, Let's just laugh off some of these mistakes sometimes. Don't take it so seriously. Now, some mistakes are more costly than others. I'm not saying that every kind of mistake that's out there, laugh off, but a lot of mistakes are just silly little things. Don't get hung up on them. And anyway, I think that's about all I had to say. But here comes the sales pitch plug. I'm trying to refine things, but I'm not going to be like other YouTubers and just try to blow smoke up people's butt and try to say, well, I'm going to appeal to people's emotions. That's what a salesman usually does. To make a close on a sale or something, so to speak. Sell somebody on an idea, sell somebody on a product, sell somebody on a service. Appeal to their emotions. Get their emotions all built up and slyly get a sales pitch in there somehow. I'm going to be straightforward, at least for now. I don't know. If you donate to me, well, first off, if you like the video, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe. But I have a link for donations. If you want to donate to me, I'll gladly accept it. And I only say this is because if you do that, I could make higher quality, better videos. Now, somebody say, oh, yeah, you just want to be able to spend it on some Porsche. Well, I don't know if I'd ever make that kind of money. I do know some YouTubers, I won't mention their names, that I've heard that made some decent money from YouTube. And they get themselves different vehicles and cars. I'm not into toys. I'm telling you, I'm not. I don't even care if I ever drive anymore. I don't really care for driving that much. I don't want a car anymore. It's a pain in the butt. And insurance and stuff, I mean, I just as soon not even deal with that stuff. Am I into muscle cars? No. I don't diss people who are. Am I into motorcycles? No. I think I mentioned before in one of my videos already that I had a motorcycle one time, but I lost interest in it after a while. It's too much trouble, too much stress, too much stuff to upkeep and so forth. And then you get to the point too with stuff like that. With material things, you always get to this point where, well, this doesn't work fast enough anymore, or like a motorcycle, well, it doesn't go fast enough anymore. It doesn't accelerate. I mean, I get up to the top gear and it feels like I should grab another gear. I better get a bigger bike, which I did think at one time of doing when I had my motorcycle. I had two of them, but the first one I had, I was getting to the point where it was getting a little bit sort of dull for me, and I thought to myself, I'm going to upgrade to a 750 Virago or something, but I never did because I just got to seeing how ridiculous it was. Because I thought to myself, where is it going to stop? I get a bigger model yet? Get something with a bigger engine? Get a different, fancier bike? Get a Harley Davidson? What was I going to do? I mean, where would it end? So, and again, I'm not dissing people who get into that because I'm not holier than thou. No, I'm just saying what my experience has been. So, no, when I'm asking for donations, it's just about to do this, what I'm doing here, to do it better, to have better high-resolution videos, better audio, a good microphone, a better computer with a little bit more processing power, because some of what I want to do would involve some things that I have to put in with some video programs to do some splicing, some recording of, if I'm going to do any GTA anymore, because, see, I used to have a computer, I was able to do it with two computers, and it's kind of not so easy for me to do anymore. So if I did any gameplay of GTA San Andreas, I can't do it all on one computer. I have to use two computers, and even now, like I said, I can't even do it with those two computers very well anymore. And so you have to almost have a computer that's got enough processing power, especially graphics-wise, like a graphics card maybe, to be able to record, because you got to run not only the game itself, would take some processing power for the graphics, but also the recording, screen recording program to record the gameplay and so forth. So, and I see a lot of these gamers on YouTube over the years. They've done video game walkthrough, and how should I put it? They've got good equipment, and you can tell, and they really devote a lot of time to it. They got the stuff to do it, and you can tell by the quality of the video and so forth. And their gameplay isn't laggy or anything. And see, when I've recorded some gameplay before, sometimes it would be kind of laggy. You know what I mean by that? But they got smooth movement on their video gameplay. They got crisp, clear picture, high definition. So I'm not saying I want to go out and buy a computer that's a couple grand. Now, some of them will spend that much or something, but something a little bit, probably over $1,000 or something. I've seen some newer computers they have now. Well, they're laptops actually, and they're supposed to be made specifically for gaming purposes and various things. So they're really maxed out. Well, maxed out, but they're a lot better than just an average computer. They got some more processing power, graphics-wise, and just overall processing power, a faster CPU. So, but no, I want to be able to devote more time to this, have better equipment to do better quality videos. I'll follow any suggestions anybody gives me, but like I said, if I don't have the means, that's the whole thing. That's why donations would help. I want to cover subject areas, and I want to have some stuff that's more lighthearted too, a little bit comedic. Kind of using a few different things that I've learned to enjoy over the years by what I've observed other people have with YouTube channels have done, and just what I consider some of my favorite hobbies and my favorite things to think about. And I mentioned that before. It's philosophy. I like to talk about music. Obviously, I got to watch copyrights. I can't be playing certain copyrighted music on YouTube videos. I like Marvel Comics. I have liked putting mods in the GTA San Andreas video game for PC. I like comedy. That's pretty much who I am. I'm not saying I don't date anymore, so I don't have a girlfriend to support. So you don't have to worry about me saying, well, yeah, because I want to buy my girlfriend a diamond ring. Please make donations to me. I don't date. I'm not interested in marrying or doing it. I'm not interested in any kind of relationship in that kind of way at all. I just don't. I have other things that I like to do. And being alone and being able to do those things, I don't have to worry about anybody heckling me about spending time with them or spending, well, money on them. And I'm not dissing females out there or anybody. I'm not, no. I'm not saying anything against anybody that likes the idea of dating somebody and having a relationship or being married. I'm not. To each his own. I don't care to raise any more children. I have raised one son, um, and he's now, 20. Excuse me, 20. What is he now? 25. 25. Yeah. I have to think about these things because I got a lot going on in my head at times. But my son is grown up. Um, well, sometimes I wonder about that. But no, anyway, I don't have a lot of expense and overhead. I would like to find another place to move to. Um, but again, I rent. I don't have my own home. I don't have a mortgage payment. I don't tend to ever have a home. I don't want one. So, I will I'd be happy just renting, continuing to rent. Uh, I have all the basic furnishings that a person could want. There's a few things I could want, but I'm not into a bunch of fanciness. I'm not into having every little trinket that there is out there, and I don't have to have the best of everything. Now, things that I use a lot of, like say my computer here or whatever, and certain other things that you use the most, you want something that's better quality because you're using it a lot. But other things, that you don't have to have the best of, why bother spending a lot of money to get something that you don't use that much anyway, uh, to really wear it out or what have you. I mean, I tend to think that you should have less, keep certain just basic items and what you like the most. And yes, with those things, try to have something that's good. Maybe the best that you can get, but at least something in the mid range where you're not getting the crappiest thing and you're not getting the most expensive of that particular thing, but somewhere in the middle. But like I said, donations, I don't want to do this, but if I'm going to continue this YouTube channel and do better at it, but maybe anybody watching this will say, well, you don't have a snowball's chance in hell. Fine. And, if it isn't going to work out, then hey, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But like I said, with my time, with the resources I have, and any time and equipment I have, uh, I can only do so much. If you donate, one hand washes the other. I can make better videos. Get more time to do it, and have more time and have more the resources to make better quality videos. Because time and money, time and certain equipment and resources are important if you're gonna do anything with any sense of quality and with any sense of continuing to build the passion that you have for that endeavor. Sorry for that. It's kind of like an inspirational speech there. But yeah, that's about it. That's it for today's discussion, today's video. Just a correction on some things from my previous video. Again, if you like, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button. Donations, if you feel free to donate, the link's in the description. Again, I don't like to say that, but that's the nature of the beast of the world we live in. It's commercial, and money is what gets things done as the medium of exchange. But I want this to be my passion, and I want to give good videos. And if you want good videos, if you like what I have, and you want me to do even better or whatever, then please donate. If not, it's okay. I'm not begging. I'm just stating a fact. Well, that's it for Same Difference Theater, signing off, over and out.
And I haven't been able to figure out how to do that. This learning stuff from entities is not respectable in our present official intellectual world. But when you start asking questions, you'd be amazed where entities have acted and with what force. For example, I mean, this is, to my mind, one of the great suppressed stories of modern history. In August of 1619, a retreating Habsburg army camped in Ulm in southern Germany for a few days. They were retreating from a campaign against Prague, where they had successfully deposed the Winter King and Queen. And in this group of troops, of several thousand troops, was a young French adventurer, 22-year-old soldier of fortune. And that night, the night of August the 12th in Ulm, he slept and had a dream. And an angel appeared to this young man and said, "The mastery of nature is achieved through measure and number." This was René Descartes. This was the founder of what is called materialism, rationalism. His marching orders were given to him in the same way that Muhammad got his marching orders. All of modern science was created at the behest of an angelic entity. Well, they're not talking about this at Caltech and MIT, let me tell you. So how many times in history have voices taken the wheel? Another example, one that's dear to my heart, is, because I kind of identify with him, is Alfred Russel Wallace, who was a poor surveyor from Devon, who was out collecting insects in Indonesia in the last century, and he got a fever on the island of Ternate, malaria. And in the midst of this fever, he understood the solution to the great problem of 19th century biology, which was called the problem of the species. He saw how random mutation and natural selective forces could produce biological diversity. And when he came down from this thing, and this was again an angelic deliverance in the height of this fever, he couldn't figure out what to do with it. So he wrote a letter to the greatest scientist of the age, which was Charles Darwin in London. And when Darwin opened this letter, just said, "Holy shit. This guy has scooped me. 20 years I've been working on the origins. Here it is in 4 paragraphs. Who is this guy?" Well, so then it became the Darwin-Wallace theory of evolution for its first 50 years, and then Wallace dropped out of the picture because he disgraced himself by an interest in spiritualism. But you can understand why, if the guy got the original vision from an angel.
Can I comment on spiritualism?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Man, it is so cool to be back together with these guys doing this,